So I guess, you've been on your journey. I think for some of us here in the audience, I've seen you and followed you on your journey across. Certainly the first time I met you was when I was a Strathclyde supporter, and you were kind of coming in and pitching. I can't remember what stage it was. Maybe stage 2, maybe at that time.
I think it was.
It was quite interesting at that time, where one of the things which I was kind of really excited about was just again that kind of testing aspect that you were kind of looking about. So really, first starting off, do you want to kind of a brief introduction to yourself and also a bit more about Microplate?
Yeah, thanks, Alistair. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you for the invite. So, I'm Dr. Stuart Hannah, CEO and co-founder of Microplate Dx, but I'll take you back a few stages. So, my background is actually in electronic and electrical engineering, got an undergraduate and went on to do my PhD in EEE from the University of Strathclyde, which feels like a million years ago now, but it was all, certainly the PhD side of things, took me down the route of organic electronics, basically. So creating essentially flexible, stretchable, organic transistors, sensors, that sort of thing, really pushing the sort of boundaries that you could do in terms of microfabrication and sensor development. So that was a great experience. And then it took me on to doing postdoctoral research work in France, which was great. Again, moving into a little bit more on the sort of biomedical side of things. So trying to put stretchable sensors onto bladders for monitoring things like urinary urge incontinence and overactive bladder syndrome and things. But it took me into that kind of biomedical space, which was a great foray into then coming back to Strathclyde in 2018, joined the Department of Biomedical Engineering this time on what was called essentially the Microplate project. So this was all about trying to develop a rapid diagnostic sensor for tackling antibiotic resistance and trying to do it in a time frame significantly quicker than the gold standard technologies enable you to do. And that's really where Microplate Dx was born. So really taking that kind of technical project at that point, realizing the commercial potential and scaling this into a spinner opportunity. So raising investment to be able to really commercialize that whole idea. So now we're a team, there's about 8 of us in total across the sort of technical and the commercial aspects of the business, with that core mission to try to develop a rapid screening tool that you can use at the point of care to ensure that patients get the right antibiotic straight away without having to wait 2-3 days plus, change treatment, and that whole rigmarole that we go through at the moment. So undoubtedly, it will help tackle that societal level of antibiotic resistance by getting the right treatment out there first time. But on an individual patient level, it could be transformational in terms of avoiding things like sepsis and things like that sort of occurring. So that's essentially what we're trying to achieve.
Amazing. I think, every, kind of just hearing that is just, certainly it's, that journey that you've been on from electrical engineering, electronic engineering right through to kind of biomedical. How long was that kind of journey in total, kind of roughly about, how long?
I finished my PhD back in 2017.
Okay.
So it's been sort of 4 or 5 years going through that journey of transitioning to the biomedical side of things and seeing the applicability piece there, but also on a commercial space as well, because I was a technical lead on this project, working in the lab, developing the proof of concept, and then, really starting to commercialise the opportunity with mentoring and support from people like Inspire and Scottish Enterprise, etc. But on a personal level, going through things like the RSE Enterprise Fellowship Programme, getting support from iCure to do the customer discovery work, the whole thing really, probably about 4 or 5 years in total to get to this point.
So in that journey, when did you think, when did you realise you think you were onto something? I know it's kind of like, you go in front of a lot of panels and whatnot. So when was that kind of golden nugget, the golden time?
Interesting, yeah. So somebody asked me this very question earlier today, which made me think, but actually it goes back to probably 2019.
Okay.
So at that point, we developed the proof of concept. At that point, we were looking at a really common hospital-acquired infection, MRSA, and we developed this proof of concept test in the lab, and we could actually pull down that time to result from currently 2 days to about 45 minutes. And we realised, we thought this, there's clearly something in this. So we started speaking to the commercialisation team here at the university, patented the idea. But off the back of that, once it was sort of in that space, we published a paper on it, which went absolutely crazy. You know, we ended up putting out a press release on it. It got picked up by the BBC, STD. At that point, you know, I was taken out of my comfort zone completely. But used to talking at academic conferences and things, but not, you know, at that sort of level when you're having to do that pitch. It's a very different sort of environment that you're in. And pitching it to the sort of layperson so they can understand exactly what you're trying to do as an art form. And I think it was at that point when I realised, going through the interviews with the media, and off the back of that, the attention we started to receive from clinicians predominantly, but actually I had a few patients get in touch saying, you know, can we use that test? And you're going, I would love to be able to do this. It's not quite ethically at that stage yet. But we even had, you know, some potential VCs contact us at that point. So I thought, right, there is definitely some commercial potential to this. So we were constantly, you know, keeping that technical development going, but at the same time, you know, trying to look at that commercial angle to it. And then you're going through things like IQ, doing the customer discovery, building the business case, realizing there is actually a strong commercial pathway to this as well. So
as a founder, you're first and probably a technologist. You know, that's your kind of the kind of backgrounds. But how quickly have you transitioned towards being more commercial? How have you found that journey moving into that? Because I know that, you know, all of us who have come from a technical background, we kind of like to kind of keep onto that. Because how's that transition been?
I've really enjoyed it. I've actually really enjoyed the process. I think I realised quite early on that it's clearly a different set of skills, but actually a lot of them are transferable. So you know, some of the technical skills have to be there and a strong understanding of the technology, but actually I tried to absorb as much help as I could along the way, I think, to try and to do that. So, you know, pitching being a clear aspect, you know, maybe it didn't come naturally, but it's something that you do need to try to develop. And seeking out opportunities. You know, we went through a lot of Scottish enterprise support through HGSP, but also the Converse Challenge, Scottish Edge, going through that competition, IQ and the customer discovery, just trying to take in as much as possible from those that had been there, done it before, seek advice as much as you can, absorb that, and then sort of try to make my own pathway with that information. So I have really enjoyed that process, but you're absolutely right. I mean, it's still Mr. Lab from day to day, you know, there's always going to be that element. Exactly. That's always going to be there. But I think that's important for then talking about the technology going forward, coming up with new ideas and dealing with the technical teams as well. So having that oversight is still critical, but I find less and less time to be able to do that nowadays.
So we've actually got a few questions from each of our other founders here and that kind of presented. So I'm going to ask Claire, do you want the first question to ask?
I'm interested in EdTech. What's the advice you would give to a 10-year-old you about learning and entrepreneurship?
Fantastic question. I think go for it, you know, and I mean that because I guess I'd kind of gone through that more traditional academic route, you know, undergrad, straight into PhD, no sort of commercial experience at that point. Again, doing that sort of postdoc journey for a number of years. And it felt like I was on that sort of well-trodden path towards, say, an academic career. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with going down that route at all, but I think there is a lot more out there. And I think particularly, and I guess, born out of the sort of results we were getting in the space they were in, but there's a lot more you can do with that. And I think, you know, the commercial potential of this is just the beginning. There's, you can take this into a whole different, you know, subset of areas that we're trying to work in. And I think that's true of many projects. You know, they can almost end up staying within the sort of academic space and making real developments there. But actually, how are you going to get this into the hands of, for us, you know, patients and end users, clinicians, etc., or whatever field you're in? How are you going to start translating that? So, 10 feels young, but you know what? It's never too early to make a start.
It's like inspiring in the future.
Thank you.
Anna.
Very well done. I seen your first pitch in Inspire100 a few years ago. So super excited to see your progress. What is next? Where are you going? What is your kind of vision for the future?
Thanks, Anna. No, it feels like a lifetime ago. For us, we're actually fundraising at the moment, and that will be pivotal, I think, in terms of scaling the teams, technically and commercially, really getting it to that next stage. Completion of that initial product for urinary tract infections that we're working on at the moment, and you know, scaling some other aspects of the business around some potential research areas we've got. So, you know, really starting to push forward that, I guess, that application to the market will be a clear next stage. But expanding the team certainly being a big one, and just trying to constantly grow and accelerate that sort of route to market.
And just, I mean, and one of the things which, again, at the stage you're at, I mean, a lot of the bigger companies maybe, have you had many of the bigger kind of life science, kind of pharmaceutical companies speaking to you, Tom?
That's absolutely it. You know, I mean, going back even 2 or 3 years, we've been having those sort of conversations right from the sort of initial customer discovery and now through to potential strategic partnerships, potentially looking eventually towards sort of exit opportunities as well. You know, this is a well-trodden path that, you know, you might start to partner up with some of these companies. And there's a lot out there interested in terms of what we're doing. You know, that sort of move to the point of care in the diagnostic space is absolutely the direction of travel, particularly if you look at it now in terms of with the NHS is in terms of the pressures they've got. If you can move any sort of this testing towards even point of care within hospital settings or primary care level, and there's a lot of move in that space. You know, you talk to some of these big players and they typically have gaps. You know, they might be providing some of the bigger, higher throughput, central lab focused solutions, but actually where they can then see an adjunct is very much at that point of care diagnostic type space. So no, there's a lot of interest from a technical point of view, and you know, when you bring them solid data, of course, you need to see the evidence for that. But if you've got that and you can show that actually you can do this in those sort of timeframes, you know, certainly 45 minutes to an hour, that kind of point, that makes a huge difference, and it really does interesting. And
remember, that was one of the things which, you know, when I first saw you, you know, that kind of point of care aspect, you know, you're going to bring it out of the lab directly into the community was definitely, I mean, that in itself again changes that process, that dynamic that you've kind of got. You know, there is a big challenge, and how you can address that, I think, is a good thing. Right, I'm going to
yeah. Hi, Stuart. My question today is, what would you find was the toughest part of your commercial journey, and how did you deal with that?
Great question. Yeah, thanks, Matthew. I would have said probably raising that initial investment. Actually, I would have said that was quite tough because, you know, I'd had a lot of, I guess, smaller grants and things like that under the kind of umbrella of being under the relative sanction of the university as a spin out, you know, so getting support from Scottish Enterprise and conversion things, but making that leap and actually saying, getting somebody to invest into the business to enable you to take that leap and go and, you know, do it off your own bat, you know, really commercialise that as a completely separate entity. And I think it's become far easier actually since getting that initial funding and, you know, the conversations in flow, you've got that basis, you've got that traction there, but it's taking that step. But there's things you can do to de-risk that. I mean, I think it's building that solid business case commercially, having the tech behind it, but then building that really solid business case, knowing your numbers in terms of financials, knowing the market opportunities, you can de-risk that whole process along the way. But you will end up, I guess, kissing a lot of frogs when it comes to the sort of investment piece before you then settle on where you're going to go. But I think that's one of them. You just have to keep plugging away and know the potential of what you're doing.
Yeah, there's it. Bonjour.
Yeah, hi. So the first few people you hire in a startup are crucial for the success of it. And you, I would say, have, as a founder of a spin-out, you have the luxury of having access to that talent pool of the researchers that really developed to the technology. So how did you go about involving them into the company, and how many of them are still with you on your commercial journey?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. That's a really good point because, you know, you're trying to attract the best talent that you can within the realms of being a startup with the sort of budgets that you have, and, you know, you're trying to make that as attractive as possible. And it's, you know, it's not for everybody, but the ones you can attract in, I think there's huge advantages to then joining a startup at this stage and helping to shape company direction. And actually, that's something that we've tried to embed from the beginning. So actually, even, you know, we've brought forward 3 now members of what were university staff into the spin out, and actually kept that 100% success rate of people transitioning into the business, which I think is because they saw the value in what we were doing. They shared the vision, but actually they've had an opportunity to shape direction. You know, we hold very regular monthly sort of strategy days as a business, where everybody from the R&D teams up to sort of C-suite are involved in shaping that direction. And I think that's really important in terms of them feeling that they've got that ability to help shape where things are going, not just from a technical level, but being involved in conversations with all those other angles as well. So everyone's, you know, got an understanding of what's happening on a commercial basis, what's happening in terms of the technical push forward. And I think that's quite attractive as well. I mean, there's other things you can do as well from an HR perspective. There's a lot happening nowadays. People getting their birthdays off, for instance, feeling valued within organisations, and there's a lot you can do in that kind of space as well. But I think fundamentally, it's seeking people with that mindset and the ambition to join you at that early stage, and it can ultimately pay dividends if you get it right.
And I guess, that also comes back to your board. Again, how have you found that? How have you found building your board? Has that been a bit of a challenge, or is that something which you've kind of iteratively developing as you move forward?
We were actually very fortunate in terms of building the board, and a hugely supportive board actually for the company, which has been really pivotal, I think, in terms of the direction we've taken, because we'd had those early sort of board members involved sort of going through that spin out process. So actually we'd got the encouragement there in terms of how that was going to shape going forward. And, I'm very, very fortunate that I've got, co-founders involved in the board, and I've got people there that actually are truly supportive and mentors towards myself going on this journey as well. And that's been incredible, I think, in terms of taking that forward. So that's been very, very valuable. People like Puram involved in the board has been absolutely fantastic for us. And Andy Porter coming in as a non-exec director has really shaped that direction as well. Mm-hmm. So it's been excellent. I think for us, trying to keep the structure, certainly at this stage of the business, kind of as lean as possible at a board level is important. Don't want to get it too unwieldy before things go forward. And obviously going through future investment rounds, that will change somewhat. And some people may move in and out depending on the sort of stage of the business. But for where we're at just now in terms of that scale journey, I think we've got that pretty well sorted and been commented on it. So
it's a good point, actually, that for founders who are creating a business to recognise that when you do create or bring in support, that you're continually changing that support as you develop your business and as you mature. Because again, there's support that's available. Expertise is not necessarily there right throughout, but it's something that can evolve. Finally,
yeah. So just as the business has progressed, what sort of split do you have now between actually developing the product further and running the business? And then how does that then feel sort of like passing on your designs to someone else to take forward?
Great question again. Yeah, it goes back to Alistair's earlier point about being, I guess, that techie involved in the lab and then trying to run things. I mean, it has become almost full-time sort of day-to-day operations rather than doing the technical side of things. Certainly, as far as a hands-on technical side of things go. But something I'm determined not to lose is being involved in weekly technical update meetings just to see how the progress is shaping and to help try to, wherever possible, shape that future development. I think that's absolutely pivotal, particularly at this stage when you're trying to, come up with new products, really expand the platform capabilities, really push the limits of what you can do, maybe expand IP portfolios, for instance. There's a lot there to still be aware of that marries into that commercial space. But it's amazing how quickly that having the time to be able to, I guess, kind of keep an eye on both very quickly disappears, So
that's a good point, actually. I mean, and again, if anybody's got any questions, please do put your hand up and we'll take any questions from the audience. Kind of one which I kind of want to kind of pick up on is, again, just kind of how much time do you spend now really kind of going for investment versus engaging with customers? I mean, what's the one area that's keeping you awake every night more than anything else?
Well, it's a really good point. I mean, we're fundraising at the moment, and people say it as a full-time job. It can be. It certainly can be. I think being strategic about it as we're trying to be can avoid it becoming completely overwhelming in terms of the amount of time you have to put into it. But it does take a lot of time. You do go out there, you're trying to be strategic in terms of the investment you're taking as well. It's, for us, it's about what opportunities can the investors bring to the table as well in terms of what markets we maybe want to go out to and trying to look a few stages ahead. So we're going out talking to investors beyond Scotland, beyond the UK, even going to Europe, going to the US. And that takes time. You get time differences there, so you need to account for that. Cultural differences, again, really, really important. What we do in Scotland doesn't always translate, and sometimes you need to find that sort of happy medium when you're talking to different cultures and things. So It does take a lot of time, but it's not the be all and end all. But it's still you still need to drive the business forward. It's still talking to customers. It's still making sure that the regulatory side, on the IP side, everything's still moving forward there. So you can't. You have to delegate. You need to find others that can help.
And I'm going to take one question. Yeah.
Yes, I'm just interested in being involved in a few startups. The old adage is there's only three things that matter: cash flow, and cash flow. Because you can have the best idea in the world, but unless you can actually get the funding, whether it be through grant, investment, or whatever, the business is likely to fail. I don't know if that's been your experience.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And I think in the early stages as well, it's about, again, that being strategic piece around what can we pull in from a non-dilutive point of view, what grants can we go for that don't take all of your time up, but again, can add value in terms of that investment that you're bringing in. And it is a bit of a mismatch, from what we've raised, it's definitely been some equity investment, there's been grants there as well, it's been some state aid. But you're right, cash at this stage is so important. Particularly when you're growing a team, you need to have a reasonable runway to then give you that opportunity to then raise again with decent valuations, etc., to then pull you through to the next stage. And you're not at the point where you're running out of cash and you're just desperate to take what you can. Which again, easier said than done, particularly in the current climate. But trying to be clever about it and be conservative where you can, but also continuing to drive things forward and meet milestones for the next stage. So, yeah.
So, I mean, what do you want to be remembered for?
Honestly, first and foremost, I think being a sort of decent guy. I think that does come first. I think certainly doing things right. Sticking. Being, I guess, the moral code and all that stuff, and ethically, and just making sure that things are done right. And actually, that is first and foremost for me. But secondly, trying to make a difference from a business point of view.
Yeah.
What difference can we make in terms of the healthcare piece? That impact on patients, getting that right antibiotic to them as quickly as possible. And healthcare is a relatively easy one to pitch in terms of the saving lives, but it's so true in terms of what we're trying to achieve. It could be transformational. So, if it's myself, the business, the whole piece together, the whole team is remembered for just trying to make a difference to patient lives. Yeah, that'd be excellent.
So I mean, it is a really great thing to be focused on, is to helping others and making that change. But within your business, who do you not have right now that you really need?
2 key hires we'll be making at the next stage. So one is going to be on the sort of commercial operations side of thing. So almost having that sort of...
And is that person in Scotland?
Hopefully.
Good.
Hopefully. Should be.
Who do you think you'll get them? Don't answer.
No, absolutely. I think Scotland's got a fantastic ecosystem to tap into, actually, for those sort of roles. And I think, that's a key one for me, because it has become operational as well as that sort of CEO role. It's my sort of role is, I guess, trying to marry a number of different things up here. So at the next stage, that's an absolutely crucial one for us, as well as bringing in somebody directly involved from a lab point of view in terms of like an R&D sort of manager. Again, another critical role that we want to fill at that next stage, just to have that sort of bridge and to have the oversight from a technical point of view. So that's key.
It's one of the challenges for as a founder, when you're actually the person who's the front-facing aspect, and you are driving that commercial kind of conversation and the journey. That transition to be able to bring somebody on board, into the team and giving them the trust to then move forward. Is that something you found easy, or you find it? You're learning on that.
Certainly learning. Yeah, certainly learning. I think there's definitely things we learn as we progress, and go back to the board aspect. There's certain people you can bring in to fulfill a job for a particular period of time, and you then maybe move on. You take the learnings that you can, and then it's mutually agreeable, what have you. But then at that point, for the business, it then makes sense to progress to the next stage. So that is something that you learn as you go along. I think we are as diligent as we can be in terms of the people we allow to take part in the business, and I'm sure people make mistakes as they go through, but I think doing that diligence engaging people as well. There's different ways to engage people,
Yeah.
and maybe sort of service contracts for a period of time with specific set milestones before you then sort of hand them over the reins entirely. There's ways to do it.
Yeah.
To still retain that control, and it gives you that capability as a founder to actually, say if this isn't working. But, think positively. Yeah, so far we've been very fortunate with people we've had involved, and actually everyone has added a lot of value in terms of driving forward where we're trying to go, and long may it continue.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. To find out more about Strathclyde Inspire and our podcasts, please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn and Twitter, or search for Strathclyde Inspire on the University of Strathclyde website.